Hello, my name is Monique Musiel, and I'm the author of An Understanding Beyond, which can be read on Amazon.com. Today, I would like to address the question of what does God mean by do not covet? In Exodus 20:17 of the NLT Bible, it reads, "You must not covet your neighbor's house, you must not covet your neighbor's wife, male or female servant, ox or donkey, or anything else that belongs to your neighbor." Modern days now, of course, would be a car, that type of thing. It wouldn't be a donkey, I'm sure. This is actually a warning about obsessive wanting of what someone else has. Because intense desire can lead to serious sin. In James 1:15 of the New American Standard Bible, it states, "Then when lust has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it has run its course, brings forth death." Because people will do just about anything to get what they want. We should really just count our blessings and be satisfied with what we have. Because there will always be people who are better or worse off than we are. Someone could be rich and famous, but they might be lonely, miserable, or sick. How's their money going to help them when they're ill and can't be cured? So it follows that money won't guarantee happiness. There are people who are poor, but perhaps they have the love and respect of their families, their friends. With good relationships, it's easy to be at peace, to face the difficulties of life when you have support around you. Plus, most of all, if you trust in God, worry becomes unnecessary. I've been quite calm in even life-threatening situations. When I was facing a quadruple heart bypass surgery in 2021 after 3 heart attacks, people were amazed that I had no fear or anxiety at all because I trusted God. I knew that whether I made it through or whether He took me up to heaven instead, everything was going to be all right. Why do people always want more or better anyhow? It seems like, for example, every time there's a new gadget on the scene, that we just have to have it. When VCRs came out, people couldn't wait to get one, even though they're expensive at first, but I do admit it was great to have one. I managed to get one for half price that was slightly used, fortunately. Now, DVDs were supposed to be better than videotapes, and everybody bought into it. While video sets became obsolete, we were deceived because DVDs get damaged very easily. Music albums were replaced by CDs, record albums, I mean. They weren't supposed to scratch, but CDs and DVDs scratch and skip and stop sometimes. And it's funny because records are now coming back because people are realizing that there's more detail and quality in the old record albums. I never got rid of mine because I knew that I wanted them, so I wasn't going to just replace them with the newer system. Fashions are a very good example. Flood pants. When I was in high school, if you wore bell bottoms that were a little too short, everybody made fun of you. They would say, "What are you expecting, a flood?" Thus, the term flood pants was coined and actually applied to them when they were quite the fashion about 10 years ago, and everybody's running out and buying them. Well, people from my generation were laughing about it. I was like, "You've got to be kidding me. Now they're in style? Really? It used to be, laughed at when you were in school with them too short like that. Now they're in style. What do you know?" So it's funny how we get brainwashed by the media, actually. When my daughters were in grade school, there was a snobby girl that was making fun of her. She came home crying because this snobby girl had designer jeans that looked exactly like my daughter's jeans, except they had the little name up at the top, the little name tag of a designer name. I told her, I said, "Tell your stuck-up classmate, how foolish do you feel that your mom paid $40 while my mom got a new pair that looks just like these and saved $35 for something more important?" I've always encouraged my daughters to be trendsetters instead of followers. In high school, my eldest daughter used to wear these crazy hairstyles that she would copy from the anime characters. She went to school one day, she had her hair looked like a fountain. The funny thing is that, how do you even do something like that? These are drawings that you're trying to copy with actual hair. That's actually very difficult. What's funny is that other girls soon started copying this type of thing. So when my daughters used to attend anime comic conventions, nobody was dressing up. It was just vendors selling stuff and shoppers. So this was about to change. Since my girls always had a lot of dress-up stuff, and as they got a little older, than being little kids, I let them use my sewing machine. They would show up at these anime conventions in elaborate costumes. My youngest daughter once led the Chicago parade downtown as Harley Quinn, and there had been like a half a dozen girls that were competing for that privilege. My eldest was once on the cover of Chicago magazine in her costume that she called Water. She had the most gorgeous headpiece she had made out of who knows what. It was just really elaborate and beautiful. And so they were both featured on many websites because they were photographed where they'd go. They were a really large part of the startup of dressing up at anime conventions, which soon caught up in the Chicago area and eventually spread across the country. I had to laugh when I've even seen people in movies dressed up to go to anime conventions. And this was in California where they were going to an anime convention, so it was funny. It even made it into movies. You know, you have to consider that advertising agencies that I actually used to work for have a goal to make people unsatisfied with what they have. They tell you, you'd be glamorous with clothes from this designer, or you'd be cool to drive this car if you're driving this car. I don't think that that's what it takes to be cool. Having to spend like gobs of money to be able to achieve that is not necessary. Don't we ever tire of getting led around by the nose? I won't be brainwashed into must-have fashions, specific fashions. I wear what I like, regardless of what's in fashion. I have a lot of very pretty clothes, and I'm often complimented on them. A lot of them I inherited. That's all right. We used to go to cruise nights on our motorcycles. I mean, my husband and I. And they had cars and motorcycles, and we'd all park together, people walking around looking at, all the cool cars and bikes. And this has happened a few times that a Harley guy would walk up and say, compliment me on my Honda, which is actually a really cool looking motorcycle, and say, hey, nice looking Honda. I love the purplish blue color. Maybe someday you can even get a Harley. Like, this is the ultimate. For most people it is. And I said, I don't need or want a Harley. I like my bike. It's big enough. I'm perfectly satisfied. When they asked why, I said, because mine always starts. Then they'd nod and laugh. Harleys spend a lot of time up on stocks. You better know something about fixing those things. So they knew exactly what I'm talking about. I've had this motorcycle for 20 years now. I haven't ever had any repair necessary on it, ever. So that's wonderful, actually. I used to know a young man whose almost every sentence would start with, I want. He had just about every video game you could possibly imagine, every game console you could possibly imagine, but the ones he didn't have, he still wanted. And it was that way with other stuff too. It was constantly jonesing for something. There were endless things that he desired. Now, since he was also deciding on a career, I advised him, I said, no matter how much money you make, if you're always wanting everything, you'll never be at peace. Now, luckily, he took my advice and backed down on that, so that his life would be, he'd be able to achieve some satisfaction and happiness instead of always feeling like you're lacking something. God said in Matthew 6:33 NLT, seek the kingdom of God above all else and live righteously, and he will give you everything you need. And I have found in my life that the things I really wanted, the things that were a heart's desire for me, came along for me eventually. Sometimes I had to wait a long time, but eventually, one day, all of a sudden, it was there. So, for example, I wanted a macaw when I was in college, and I said, someday I want a macaw. It took like 30 years before I got one, but somebody just gave me one. Wasn't able to afford one at the time, but it came to me anyway. And there are so many examples like this in my life. God has answered a lot of my prayers. You have to be reasonable. I wouldn't say, oh, I wish I'd win the lottery and that kind of thing. That would actually be so much responsibility to have all that money. You might find your life becomes very difficult. But if, people think that that's what's going to make you happy. Now, in the later part of my life, I'm actually grateful that I still wake up every morning, because I'm a senior now. You really don't have any guarantees, no matter what age you are, of how much time you might have left. And I wonder sometimes, what's going to happen to all my stuff when I'm gone? You spend a lifetime acquiring it, and you'll have to leave it behind someday, because you know what they say, you can't take it with you. I'm, always trying to downsize continually. If you're looking to eternity, consider how tiny a segment our life here is compared to that. I consider it a proving ground, a place to learn, grow in spirit and character in the right direction towards God. And we should take time once in a while to examine the condition of our hearts. It does have a quote about this in the Bible, and I'm not talking about physically as in with my heart attacks and surgery. I mean, examine your heart emotionally. How are you to other people? In 1 Corinthians 13:1, it reads, "If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, but have not love, I'm nothing." I have to say that the years in my life have smoothed out the jagged rocks on my seashore. Sometimes when you're young, you can be kind of arrogant and rude and prideful, selfish. These are traits that have to be diminished. I've grown gradually kinder, more soft-spoken, and generous over my lifetime. And I want to continue to do more of that as much as possible. Hopefully this happens in our lifetimes, that we are forever improving to please our Maker. God shapes us like a potter molds clay into something beautiful, if we let him. In Isaiah 64:8 of the NIV, it says, "Yet you, Lord, are our Father. We are the clay. You are the potter. We are all the work of your hand. Thank you for listening today. If you want to look up my other podcasts, just look them up by my name, Monique Musiel. That's the best way to find mine specifically. I hope you've enjoyed my message today. And again, my book, An Understanding Beyond, is on Amazon in digital format. There's a sample chapter that's there that you can just read. You don't have to commit to anything. And I hope you enjoy that also. See you next time. God bless.